Sports Talk coming at you. I'm Nick Bodkins.
And I'm Craig Koger, and we're going to get started today with another week in the books in the NFL. The drama gets crazy. Big game in the NFC was the Packers going to Atlanta taking on the Falcons. The Falcons won this one with seconds to go. What does this mean for the NFC playoff picture? And more importantly, what does this mean for the Falcons and the Packers?
For Atlanta, this means you're staying ahead of your division. The Saints won on Thanksgiving Day, so you needed this win to stay ahead of the Saints. You play the Saints one more time. You're 7-2. You only have 2 losses. It looks like you could be the #1 seed if you win out right now in the NFC. So that's good for the playoff picture because Matt Ryan's only has 1 loss his whole career there in Atlanta. For Green Bay, you lost another tough game. Now you fall a full game behind the Bears after they won yesterday against the Eagles, but I still think they'll win that division. And watching this game had a playoff feel to it. Playoff seeding was kind of on the line. It looked like, and Atlanta won. This is a huge game for Atlanta to come out and win. They had chances where it looked like they could have lost this game, but they find a way to win. The ball kind of bounced their way a couple times, and Atlanta looks, I wouldn't say the best team in the NFL, but right now, if the season ended today, they would be the #1 seed in the NFC, and that's kind of scary for other teams, being the fact that Atlanta is tough to beat there in the Georgia Dome.
I agree with you. I think it's a huge win for Atlanta. They've got the best record in the NFC now. Like you said, it just seems like they can't be beat at home, and if they get home field for the playoffs, it's going to be a big challenge for anybody to come in there and beat them. As far as the Packers, this was a heartbreaking loss. They got the fumble at the 1-yard line. Just seemed everything kind of wasn't going their way the whole game. But at the end, Aaron Rodgers puts a drive together. They come back, they tie it up with right around a minute to go. Atlanta gets the kickoff. They get a face mask penalty. They get the ball at the 50-yard line. It just seems like Atlanta doesn't lose at home. That is scary to other teams. New Orleans and Atlanta, they got to play one more time. But I think Atlanta does win this division. And I think by looking at everybody else's record, I think Atlanta does get home field in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Atlanta's scary. They do a lot of things well. They run the ball well and they throw the ball well. Matt Ryan's playing very well. He plays very well at home, so that is scary if they get the #1 seed. Moving on to the AFC, the big game, Chargers went and destroyed the Colts last night. Picked Manning off 4 times. One of Peyton Manning's worst career games. A bigger win for the Chargers or a bigger loss for the Colts?
I'm going to say it's a bigger win for the Chargers, and the only reason I'm going to say that is because the Jacksonville Jaguars lost yesterday, so the Colts don't have too much panic yet. But it is a big loss for the Colts because they've lost some of these offensive weapons in the last couple of weeks. Peyton Manning hasn't looked like Peyton Manning. He's thrown a lot of interceptions, and the Colts are on a losing streak right now. And I think it's time to worry a little bit. This is the first time in, I want to say, 6 or 7 years that the Colts are not going to win 12 games in the regular season. Jacksonville is a competitor in that division. I think Tennessee is kind of fallen off, and I think the Texans, they're a little too far back right now. But I think this is a bigger win for the Chargers because they got to keep pace and stay 1 game behind the Chiefs until that game comes up when they play them. They don't want to fall too back because I don't think there's going to be a wild card coming out of that division. If the Chargers want to get in the playoffs, they got to pass the Chiefs up and win that division. This was a big win for them.
It's both. I mean, the San Diego does what they always do, and that's win these games in November and December. Like you said, they have to keep pace to Kansas City. But it's a big loss for the Colts because this is their they've lost 3 out of the last 4 games, and they haven't looked very good. They didn't look. They had to try to put a comeback to make that game look good against New England 2 weeks ago. They didn't look good last night. Peyton Manning throwing 4 interceptions. The Chargers always play them tough. No matter who they have out there, their secondary always seems to find a way to get in his head, and didn't really look like Peyton Manning. Like you said, their team's depleted off all these guys. Dallas Clark's hurt. Their running backs are hurt. Everybody seems to be hurt on that team besides Peyton Manning, and he's trying to keep it together. But it's good for them that the Jacksonville Jaguars lost. But I think it's a big loss. It's both a bigger win and bigger loss because the Chargers got to keep pace with the Chiefs, and the Colts, they could have took a game ahead of the Jacksonville last night, and they didn't do it, and they ended up losing, and they lost bad. It didn't look very good. It wasn't a very competitive game, so it was both. It's both on that end.
And looking at it right now with these 2 teams, who would you say has the best chance to not make the playoffs out of the Chargers or the Colts?
Really, that's a tough question. I would have to. I want to lean a little bit more towards the Colts, but after last night, because I think the Chargers, they play the Chiefs one more time in San Diego. I think they can beat them. San Diego's getting hot. This is what they normally do. But I also think the Colts could, Jacksonville. I'm not too sure if I'm not banking on them either. But I'm going to go ahead and say if one or the other, I'm going to go with the Colts not making the playoffs if between them or the Chargers.
I think both teams will make the playoffs, but if I got to go with one, I'm going to say the Chargers miss out just because they're a game behind in their division and they play Kansas City. And if Kansas City can win that football game, that puts the Chargers 2 games behind them in the division. And there's only 5 games left, so that's kind of a hole for them. But I do think the Chargers are going to come back and win the division. I think the Colts, even with all the injuries and all the problems, you got Peyton Manning taking the snaps. I think even if it's by a game, I think they win the division over the Jaguars.
With only 5 games left, Craig, it looks like every division is so close. Would you rather have with the last 5 games, all the divisions are 1 game, the second guy tied, or 1 game behind the leader? Would you rather have it this way, or would you have clear-cut favorites in each division?
I'd rather have it this way. It brings more excitement to the game for me. I mean, it seems every week, there's important games and important matchups because everything's so close. And coming up this week, I mean, the Steelers and Ravens, they're tied for first place. They play each other. The Jets and the Patriots, same thing, tied for first place. And they play each other, and it brings excitement to these games, all these close races down to the finish. And there's a lot of good football teams this year, and there's a couple good football teams that are not going to get into the playoffs this year.
You're exactly right. I think maybe 2 10-win teams, or at least 9-7 team. A couple of teams with winning records aren't going to get in, and we'll be a little shocked. It does make it for competitive football down the stretch. You don't really know. Each week we say this team's the best team in the NFL, or in the AFC, NFC, and then the next week they'll lose a game that we thought they should have beat. A couple weeks ago we said Pittsburgh was the best team in the NFL, and they struggled yesterday against the Bills. So each week it's different, and it does make for competitive football. You're exactly right. We got 2 big games coming up this week. We'll get into those 2 games later in the week. But it does make competitive football. These next 5 games, it'll be interesting. It'll be a chase, and some teams that are pretty darn good will be looking on the outside looking in.
Moving on to the NBA, speaking of a team not doing really good, the Miami Heat. And there's word out now that some of the players are not happy with their coach down in Miami. What's this mean for the Heat right now?
Well, man, don't we have this talk about once a week about the Miami Heat and how they're struggling? I've said this on the record. They're not very good. And now grumblings are starting to come about Eric Spoelstra, the players not liking him, LeBron James not getting along with him. Dwayne Wade said this was their guy. They all said when they signed this is Eric Spoelstra, Spo was their guy. But man, it's hard to say that guy's yours when you're body checking him. When you're walking to the bench, watching that game against the Mavs where he body checks Eric Spoelstra, that's not a good sign. I don't know if you read too much into that, but a lot of grumblings right now. LeBron James, they say he's not being serious. Him and Eric Spoelstra have had a few words. I think Eric Spoelstra's on his way out. I said this before. I think the way it's looking right now, I think if they're sitting close to 500 at the All-Star break, Eric Spoelstra will be on his way out, and Pat Riley will be on his way down, even though the players aren't talking about it, but clearly they're not getting along with Eric Spoelstra. I don't really think it's his fault. The team's not very good. They're not very deep. We've had this discussion the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's on his way out, and I feel bad for the guy because I don't think there's very many coaches in the NBA that could handle his situation right now and keep their job with the circumstances that he's under. This project, I mean, they were supposed to come in, they were supposed to break records, they were supposed to win championships, and we're not even 20 games into the season yet. They're struggling, and his job's on the line. Of course, he's going to be catching most of the heat for this, but like you said, the team's not very good. They're not a deep team, and from what I've seen watching them play, they don't have a lot of chemistry. They said, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, they played together on the USA team. They had chemistry. It wasn't going to be a problem. To me, it looks like it is a problem. They don't play well together. They're scoring under 80 points in some of these games that they're losing. The offense just isn't clicking. They're not putting points on the board like everybody thought they would be. And they're getting beat. And right now, I think something is going to happen in Miami. I just feel bad for Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, they also didn't have a salary cap on that USA Dream Team. And that's why they were able to bring in other guys. Now there's a salary cap, and those guys are taking 3/4 of it. So now you're stuck with guys like Eddie House, who's your 6th man, and he would be a 7-8 guy on other teams. That's what's wrong there. They don't have a point guard. They don't have very big guys. They're not very deep. I'm tired of talking about the Heat. We talk about them each week. They're the most scrutinized team in the NBA. We're going to keep talking about them because of what happened in the offseason, this big hoopla. But personally, I'm really tired of talking about the Heat. We realize they suck. Let's talk about somebody that's actually halfway good, like the San Antonio Spurs, and we're here talking about the Heat every week. It's getting a little bit old, but that's what it's all about because of the Heat and this big hoopla that happened with them.
All right, moving on from the NBA. to the BCS, Boise State lost. Their kicker had 2 chances, one at the end of regulation to win the game, and one in overtime, and missed both kicks. Boise State getting their first loss, only 3 undefeateds left. How's the BCS shaping up?
Man, I just feel bad for the kicker for Boise State. Had chances twice to really win the game for his team and to keep their title hopes alive. I thought going into the game, Boise State had to beat down Nevada to maybe make a jump, and that even the closest was if they just would have won, their title hopes would still have been live, but I think it would have looked bleak. But now it's completely over. Going in, I thought Auburn would lose to Alabama. They come back and put a nice comeback on and beat Alabama. And Oregon the same way. They demolished Arizona in the second half there. I think now looking at it, those are probably the 2 best teams. I think that's the title game if Auburn can beat South Carolina. And unfortunately, TCU is going to be on the outside looking in because they're going to finish the season undefeated, looks like. And they're going to be 2 if they can win their title game, then we'll have 2 undefeated teams. Another bad year for the BCS. I still think we need a playoff system in the BCS, but right now I think it's going to be Auburn and Oregon in the title game.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what I've said for the last couple of weeks. Auburn and Oregon, both those teams were down at the half this past week. Both of them the last couple of weeks, they're just second half teams. And I think it's going to be a good matchup. Auburn and Oregon, they match up well against each other. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. If they play each other, both of them got a game left, but I don't think either one of them is going to lose. Like you said, TCU is going to go undefeated. At the end of the year, they'll be sitting undefeated without a national championship reign.
If South Carolina beats Auburn, should Auburn still play in that national title game, or do you give it to TCU?
I say TCU's got to play for it. The only 2 undefeateds left in the country.
You're exactly right. I think TCU, if Auburn ends up losing to South Carolina on this set, they have got to jump over Auburn and play for the national title game. 2 undefeated teams, but I mean it's the BCS we're talking about, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you never know what happens with the BCS.
All right, switching up to tonight's game, we're going to break down the big Monday night game. I don't really know how big it is. The 49ers and Arizona, 2 teams trying to win their crappy division. Who do you like?
I'm going to go with the Cardinals at home just because the 49ers, they haven't won a game on the road all year. All their wins have come at home, and you just never know what you're going to get out of San Francisco. Arizona, they've got trouble at the quarterback position, but they've got talent elsewhere on the field. Their defense, they've got some talented guys on defense that can make plays, and offense too. If the quarterback, can get the ball to Fitzgerald 1 or 2 times, he can break some tackles. They can score some points. I'm going to take Arizona at home.
They did win the game in London. That was the only away game they've won all season, the 49ers. This game's not in London. It is in Arizona. I do like Arizona. I do think this division is the worst division in football. You made the comment earlier that it's going to be a bunch of good teams in the NFC and then one automatic bid there in the NFC, and it's going to come out of this division. Both of these teams are 3-7, and they both can make the playoffs if they can make a nice run at it. Just because the 49ers and the Seahawks, they're 5-6. They're both below 500, so an 8-8 team could win this division. I do like Arizona to win this game tonight, but I don't think either one of these teams make the playoffs. Do you?
No, I don't. I've picked the Rams to win this division. I'm going to stick with the Rams. I think they'll hold on to it and win this division. But, like we talked about earlier, there's going to be a team in the NFC that's probably going to go 10-6, maybe 11-5, 9-7 that's not going to get in the playoffs. And the team that wins this division could go 8-8 and, get in. And, some of these other teams might be bitter, but that's just how the NFL is.
Yeah, that's the nature of the game. That's the division you're in. All right, thanks a lot for tuning in, sports fans. Check us out on Facebook. Our email is at BnK Sportstalk at hotmail.com. I'm Nick Bodkins.
And I'm Craig Koger. Check us out tomorrow. We'll be back live on Facebook.